Could a wizard bring Voldemort's soul back? Today, we'll expose the 7 ways a dark wizard could theoretically drag Voldemort's soul back from the dead in the Harry Potter universe, and why every single one of them is more terrifying than Voldemort himself ever was. We all watched the Dark Lord fall at the Battle of Hogwarts. His own killing curse, Avada Kedavra, rebounded. His body hit the floor, and that was supposed to be the end. Case closed. Wizarding World saved. Everyone gets a butterbeer. But here's the thing that keeps fans up at night. Voldemort's soul never truly vanished. We literally saw it. Harry saw it at King's Cross. That pitiful, flayed, whimpering baby thing writhing under a bench. That fragment exists somewhere. Trapped, mangled, suffering, but present. And if there's one thing the Harry Potter universe has taught us, it's that where there's a scrap of dark magic, there's a dark wizard desperate enough to exploit it. So, today we're pulling from canon lore, Rowling's own words, the restricted section, and some of the most compelling fan theories ever constructed to answer a question that should genuinely unsettle you. Could someone bring Voldemort back? 7 scenarios, ranked from improbable to downright nightmare fuel. But first, we need to understand the current state of Voldemort's soul. Otherwise, none of these 7 ways to bring him back, the Resurrection 2.0 process, will make any sense. When Tom Riddle created his first Horcrux at 16, following in the footsteps of Herpo the Foul, the ancient dark wizard who first pioneered the practice. He murdered Moaning Myrtle in June of 1943 and split his soul in half. The diary got 50%, at least that's the prevailing theory based on Slughorn's description of the process. If each new Horcrux halved what remained, then by the time he made Nagini, the amount of soul left inside him was roughly 128 of the original. 0.78%. Less than 1% of a human soul was piloting that pale, noseless body around. Let that sink in. And here's what people forget. Even the Horcrux system had a built-in weakness. A soul fragment depends on its container for survival. And it doesn't float free when the container breaks. It's destroyed along with it. Basilisk Fang through the diary. That soul piece is gone. Sword of Gryffindor through the locket? Gone. Fiend Fire consuming the diadem? Gone. Every anchor Voldemort created was methodically, irreversibly obliterated. So, when his own curse rebounded on May 2nd, 1998, there was nothing left to catch him. Every safety net was gone. Every Horcrux shattered. His 128th of a soul had nowhere to go. Dumbledore himself said there is no help possible for a soul as damaged as Voldemort's. The man was doomed to an eternity of whatever that limbo state was. A broken fragment suffering forever. Rowling established the rule plainly. Magic cannot bring back dead people to life. Once you're dead, you're dead. Dumbledore wrote in his notes on Beetle the Bard that necromancy was, quote, a branch of magic that has never worked. So that settles it, right? Well, not quite, because this is the same magical universe where Voldemort himself came back from non-corporeal death in 1995, where the Resurrection Stone can summon shades of the deceased, and where a book called Secrets of the Darkest Art, the most dangerous volume in the Hogwarts Library's restricted section and the definitive canonical source on Horcrux creation, contain step-by-step instructions for ripping your soul apart and stuffing it into objects. Rules in the wizarding world have always been more like guidelines. So, it's 1998. Voldemort is dead, but his soul is stuck in limbo, and somewhere out there a dark wizard is already looking for ways to bring him back. Because let's not forget, the Death Eaters didn't all die at Hogwarts. Plenty scattered went underground or talked their way out of Azkaban the same way they did after the First Wizarding War, by claiming the Imperius Curse made them do it. The Malfoys walked free, others vanished into Europe, into the Middle East, into networks the Ministry never fully mapped. And among the true believers, Voldemort's defeat wouldn't have killed the ideology. If anything, martyrdom tends to sharpen it. A Dark Lord is more useful than a living one to the right kind of fanatic. Someone who grew up on stories of pure-blood supremacy. Someone who lost family in the Battle of Hogwarts and blamed the other side. The question was never whether anyone would want to bring back Voldemort. The question was always whether the magic existed to do it. So, let's test them. 7 scenarios, 7 cracks in the wall, starting with the most accessible one. The Resurrection Stone is still out there. Harry dropped it in the Forbidden Forest, right before he walked to his death, and he deliberately chose never to retrieve it. He hoped it would be lost forever. Lost is not destroyed, though. The stone is sitting somewhere in the dirt and leaf litter of the Forbidden Forest. One of 3 Deathly Hallows just waiting to be picked up by whoever happens to kick the right rock. Canonically, the Resurrection Stone doesn't truly bring people back. It creates shades, figures more solid than ghosts but less than living bodies. The returned spirits don't even want to be there. They belong to the world of the dead, and the experience causes them suffering. But here's the thought experiment that makes this interesting. What if a dark wizard with genuine knowledge of death magic found the stone and amplified it, layered enchantments on top of its existing power, combined it with other rituals? Grindelwald himself believed back in 1899 that the stone could help him raise an army of Inferi. He was wrong about how it worked, but what if he was onto something about its latent potential? After all, the stone was originally created by Cadmus Peveril, a man so consumed by grief and the refusal to accept death that legend says he bargained with death itself to get it. The stone's true capabilities have never been tested by someone willing to go far enough. And dark wizards are nothing if not willing to go too far. The problem is that even amplified, you're still dealing with a shade, a shadow of a person. Voldemort's soul is so damaged it might not even be summonable in any coherent form. You might turn that stone 3 times and get nothing but that whimpering bloody baby from King's Cross, which honestly might be even more disturbing. There's another layer to this that rarely comes up. The Forbidden Forest isn't empty. Centaurs patrol it, acromantulas nest in it, and Hagrid wanders through it weekly. The stone is small, inconspicuous, and looks like an ordinary pebble to anyone who doesn't know what they're holding. A first year stumbling through the forest on a dare could pocket it without a second thought. And if word ever leaked that the Resurrection Stone was lying somewhere in the Forbidden Forest, just imagine the chaos. Treasure hunters, grief-stricken parents, dark wizards, ministry officials trying to secure it, or should we say, steal it, before anyone else could. The forest would turn into a war zone overnight. Dumbledore understood this, which is exactly why he never told anyone about the Hallows being real, until it was absolutely unavoidable. Some secrets are kept because the alternative is pandemonium. Now for the fan theory that absolutely refuses to die, and for good reason. What if Voldemort created a Horcrux we don't know about? Consider the timeline. Between roughly 1946 and 1981, Tom Riddle traveled the world, visited Albania, explored dark magic across continents, and was obsessed with immortality beyond all reason. We know he created 7 soul fragments, but we also know he made one completely by accident, the piece that latched onto Harry. If his soul was so unstable it could shatter without his intention or knowledge, isn't it at least conceivable that another unintentional split occurred during some act of violence we never witnessed? Here's the canon detail that makes this genuinely compelling. The diary's soul fragment could possess Ginny Weasley, flitting in and out of her while the magical container remained intact. Picture this. Somewhere in the world, an artifact Tom Riddle handled during his travels, something he murdered near, something no one ever identified as a Horcrux, has been slowly and quietly influencing someone for decades. No one looking for it because everyone believes the Horcrux hunt is over. His soul whispering to someone this entire time, growing stronger, feeding off their emotions, waiting for the right moment to take control. Just like the diary did with Ginny, except this time no one is looking for the signs. Think about the places Tom Riddle visited: Albania, where he corrupted the diadem; Egypt, where the curse-breaking Weasley brother Bill later worked, and where ancient dark artifacts are still being unearthed; Eastern Europe, where Durmstrang alumni had a documented tolerance for the dark arts. That would have made Riddle feel right at home. Any object he touched during a murder could theoretically have absorbed a soul fragment his already fractured soul never noticed losing. A goblet in a roadside tavern, a pendant bought from a market stall in Cairo. Something unremarkable, something that no portrait of Dumbledore would think to search for. Because even Dumbledore worked from the assumption that Voldemort's vanity demanded objects of historical significance. The canon seems pretty clear that Dumbledore and Harry identified and destroyed them all, but pretty clear and absolutely certain are very different things in a universe built on magical secrets. Let's talk about what actually worked. On June 24, 1995, in the graveyard of Little Hangleton, Peter Pettigrew performed the regeneration ritual that gave Voldemort his body back. Bone of the father, flesh of the servant, blood of the enemy. Voldemort called it an old piece of dark magic. The kind of dark art that secrets of the darkest art and similar forbidden texts have preserved across centuries, implying he didn't invent it. Other dark wizards had used it before him, so could someone just do it again? In theory, yes. You have a recipe. This time maybe we just add the nose back. You have a precedent, and the magic exists. But here's the critical difference. In 1995, Voldemort still had soul fragments anchoring him to the living world. His Horcruxes were intact. There was something to pour back into a body. After May 1998, there's nothing. Every fragment destroyed. Every anchor obliterated. Every wisp of consciousness snuffed out. The regeneration ritual can restore a body, but it needs a soul to fill it. It's like building a perfect house with no one to live in it. Worth remembering that the regeneration ritual was actually Voldemort's second comeback. His first through Quirrell was far cruder. Parasitic possession of a living host, sustained by unicorn blood. That method required Voldemort to already exist as a disembodied consciousness, something he managed only because his Horcruxes were still intact, and tethering his soul to the mortal plane. After 1998, even that parasitic option disappears. There's no consciousness left to possess anyone. The wraith that haunted Albanian forest for 13 years was powered by 5 intact Horcruxes, and every one of those batteries is now permanently dead. A dark wizard performing the bone flesh blood ritual in a graveyard today would get a body with nothing inside it. A very expensive, very illegal mannequin. Unless you could somehow reach into that limbo space and pull the fragment out, which is where this gets really dark. The next scenario is genuinely fascinating because it exploits a canonical inconsistency that has never been fully resolved. We're told that when a Horcrux is destroyed, the soul fragment within it is destroyed too. Obliterated, gone forever, but we literally see one that wasn't. The mangled baby Voldemort at King's Cross. Harry saw it, Dumbledore acknowledged it, and it was suffering beyond help. But it was there, battered beyond recognition, yet stubbornly, undeniably present. That fragment exists in some form of afterlife limbo. So, what if a dark wizard versed in death magic, someone who had studied the veil in the Department of Mysteries, perhaps under the noses of the Ministry of Magic itself, someone who understood the boundary between life and death better than anyone since Voldemort himself, attempted to create a reverse veil ritual, a way to reach across into that limbo and extract the fragment. You wouldn't be resurrecting Voldemort in the traditional sense. You'd be pulling a piece of damaged soul out of purgatory and giving it a vessel. The result wouldn't be the Voldemort we know. It would be something diminished, something broken, something operating on less than 1% of a human soul. But it would be something, and something with even a fraction of Voldemort's magical knowledge would be catastrophically dangerous. The counter-argument is Dumbledore's own words. There is no help possible. Maybe that limbo is sealed, but Dumbledore also believed no one would find the Room of Requirement useful enough to explore fully. And he was wrong about that too. This next one is less about bringing Voldemort back and more about creating something almost worse. After the Battle of Hogwarts, Voldemort's body was moved away from the other fallen, presumably buried in an unmarked grave somewhere. His corpse exists, and in the wizarding world, a corpse is a resource. An Inferius is a dead body reanimated through dark magic. The spells are enormously complex, but they work. Voldemort himself raised armies of them. Now imagine a surviving Death Eater, a true believer, someone raised on stories of the Dark Lord's greatness, finding that unmarked grave and raising Voldemort as an Inferius. The problem is obvious. Inferi are hollow, mindless puppets with zero capacity for thought or will. A Voldemort Inferius would be a puppet, not a leader. But think about the psychological impact. The Dark Lord's body walking again directed by someone hidden in the shadows? The terror that would cause across the wizarding world would be immeasurable. And sometimes terror is the entire point. You don't need Voldemort's mind if you have his myth. The post-war ministry under Kingsley Shacklebolt spent years dismantling the old regime's infrastructure, shutting down Muggle-born registration commissions, reforming the Auror Department, purging Voldemort sympathizers from positions of power. But the psychological scars ran deeper than any policy could reach. An entire generation grew up checking over their shoulders for the dark mark in the sky. If someone paraded Voldemort's reanimated corpse through Diagon Alley, all of that healing unravels in a heartbeat. The panic alone would destabilize the government. People would stop trusting the ministry to keep them safe. Old alliances would fracture, and the cycle of fear that Voldemort built his entire power base on starts spinning again, and this time without needing a single killing curse. The next scenario might be the most chilling because it targets the people Harry loves most. When Voldemort used Harry's blood in the Regeneration ritual, he unknowingly absorbed Lily Potter's sacrificial protection into himself. That protection acted as a tether, anchoring Harry to life even when the Horcrux inside him was destroyed, working like the Horcruxes themselves, a connection between Voldemort and the living world flowing through Harry's bloodline. Harry's blood, and by extension the blood of his children, carries a unique magical signature. It once sustained Voldemort's physical form. A dark wizard with sufficient knowledge might theorize that this blood could serve as a bridge, a way to call Voldemort's essence back across the boundary of death. Imagine a descendant of Death Eaters targeting the Potter children, not for revenge, but for their blood as a literal magical ingredient in a resurrection attempt. And notably, Severus Snape was one of a few people besides Dumbledore who understood both the depth of Lily's sacrificial magic and the precise mechanics of how Voldemort's tether to Harry actually functioned. Knowledge that, in the wrong hands, could make this ritual attempt far more precisely targeted than any dark wizard working from theory alone. Would it work? Almost certainly not. The protection in Harry's blood was Lily's love, and love is the one force Voldemort never understood. Any ritual built on that blood would be fighting against the very magic that destroyed him in the first place. But a fanatic might not know that, or might not care. Every scenario so far has one thing in common: an outside force trying to drag Voldemort back against the laws of magic. Someone hunting for stones, performing rituals, raising corpses, or harvesting blood. All of them assume that resurrection is something done to Voldemort. But the final scenario flips that assumption entirely, because the one path that might theoretically work doesn't require a dark wizard at all. It requires Voldemort himself. So, the final and most unexpected possibility of all: what if Voldemort saved himself? Hermione discovered that the only way to repair a fractured soul is through genuine remorse. True, deep, honest remorse for the murders committed. The process is agonizingly painful, potentially fatal, but it can make a soul whole again. Harry himself, in his final confrontation, told Voldemort to try, to feel remorse, to be a man, and Voldemort predictably refused. But here's the question no one asks. What about the instant of death itself? In that fraction of a second when his own curse, Avada Kedavra, hit him? When he felt his body dying, when he experienced the very thing he feared most in all the world? Is it possible that some involuntary flash of regret passed through him? Not noble remorse, not genuine repentance, but the raw animal terror of a creature that devoted its entire existence to avoiding death, suddenly experiencing it. Could that flash, that microsecond of unwanted emotion, have been enough to begin healing even one fragment? Probably not. Rowling has been clear that Voldemort refused remorse. But the idea that his own fear, the defining trait of his entire existence, might have been the key to his salvation, and he was too proud to use it. That's the most tragic possibility of all. So, where does this leave us? 7 scenarios, 7 theoretical doors, and every single one of them ultimately runs into the same wall. Rowling built the Harry Potter universe on one foundational truth that separates it from almost every other fantasy series. Death is real. Death is permanent. It's not a problem to be solved or a villain to be defeated. It's the natural order, the entire moral arc of the series. From the Philosopher's Stone to the Deathly Hallows, it's about accepting that. Voldemort's great crime was something worse than murder, a total refusal to accept mortality. Every Horcrux, every dark ritual, every life he took was in service of running from the one thing no magic can prevent. And his punishment fits, an eternity trapped as that wretched broken thing under the bench at King's Cross. Not dead enough to move on, not whole enough to exist. Could a dark wizard bring him back? The magic says no. The rules say no. The author says no, But the fact that we can sit here and map out 7 different pathways that at least make you pause and wonder, well, that speaks to how rich this world really is. And honestly, the scariest part has nothing to do with whether the magic would work. In a world full of dark wizards, someone would definitely try. So, which scenario do you think comes closest to actually working? Drop it in the comments below, and if there's an 8th path we missed, bring it up. Also, here's a question. Can Voldemort survive a headshot? That's your next lesson here at Stickman Hogwarts. Click now before someone hands him a helmet.